Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Rhonda. Sorry. What's that?
Noordyk.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
Well, I'm not going to even say that part, and maybe they'll cut this out. I was on the wrong part of my notes. I'm going to stop panicking. Let's start over.
yes. Take two.
Take two. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Rhonda. Rhonda began holding financial seminars for women going through a divorce while she was a financial advisor with a boutique registered investment advisory firm. At the time, it was unheard of, and her male colleagues thought she was ridiculous to be so specific in her audience. Rhonda became an advocate for women going through a divorce. She is committed to filling the gap between traditional financial advisors and divorce support groups for women. Welcome, Rhonda. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is such an important topic, and especially those of us that went through a divorce or are going through a divorce, like even with narcissists, unfortunately, well, everybody does this, I think, not just narcissists, but there is that financial abuse in divorce, or there can be. And so I'm glad that you're doing this kind of thing. How did you get started and why did you decide? I love that they said, "You're crazy." A woman has
Yeah,
an idea. You're crazy.
exactly. They're like, I don't know how this is going to work. But we think that, the train's gone off the tracks um, but no, I mean, it's just been kind of an interesting journey. So, this year I'll be starting my 10th year, in business. And really, I had to do a lot of soul searching
Mhm.
because I think at the end of the day, people are like, okay, well, I went through divorce and now I've got a passion for helping women that are going through divorce. And the reality for me is that I haven't gone through divorce.
Yeah.
But in fact, there's been a lot of situations in my life, a lot of trauma
Okay.
that has really allowed me to be able to speak the language, empathize,
Right.
with women. And I look back, it's like you look back at your childhood and you're like, gosh, I was always kind of the advocate. I always was the one who
Yeah.
was like, I want it to be fair. I want just,
I
like
know. Me too. I have such a justice bent, and it makes myself a little bit crazy because I'm like, life isn't fair, but I don't like it when things are unfair. Like, it doesn't have to be equally perfect for everybody, but yes, I do go towards that justice side of
yeah,
like, we got to fix this.
yeah. It's important. And I think, I went through this exercise where it was like, okay, what energizes you? What drains your energy? And oh, by the way, one other question is, what do you hate?
Oh, okay.
And I did this probably about right around the time I was starting my business. And what I hate is abuse.
Hmm.
I hate abuse. And again, that starts from, my childhood. My dad was an alcoholic, then in recovery, addicted to gambling, all these kinds of things, right?
Okay.
And so I came out of that traumatic kind of environment. Going into college, was having daily panic attacks,
Mm.
would not really leave my dorm room unless I absolutely I mean, it was awful, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that stuff just manifests itself in ways that today I can't even, I mean, trying to go back to think about that.
Yeah.
I'm thankfully very far removed, would not travel anywhere from by myself, didn't want to drive anywhere by myself.
Mhm.
Like it was just really, really
And
confining.
was that to you, kind of the side effects of, like, growing up in a house with chaos or whatever with your alcoholic? Because I think I see that. There's certain things that I do that are similar to that, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's just my trauma talking." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I have to talk myself through that. Is that what you
Yeah.
feel? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a coping mechanism that was not good, and it just was manifesting itself in really just this constant overwhelming fear, and it
Yeah.
was really impacting my life. And anyways, long story short with that, you come out of that, and you get in a situation where you can start to rebuild and work through those things and work through the trauma and
Yeah.
reshape your mindset around certain things. And it was probably in my like mid 20s that I ended up participating in the financial industry. And all that to say, I mean, there were a lot of really good things. The people that I was working with, and I share a little bit about this in my book that's coming out later this summer,
Uh-huh.
but I talk about, there was definitely a lot of good things. There was encouragement. I saw people that were very successful
Mm-hmm.
financially and were responsible. They really did want to make people's lives better,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I really was fortunate. But at the same time, there's also dysfunction that comes in those types of situations. So you've got a
Right.
lot of individuals that are alpha male who
Yeah.
not bad people, bad coping skills, or whatever. And so I found myself kind of some of those patterns that I dealt with as a kid repeating itself now in my professional career.
Okay.
And so, anyways, long story short, in 2014, I left the financial industry um, to open up Women's Financial Wellness Center. And at the time, I thought, gosh, there's got to be something like this. Like, there's got to be something, a franchise or a model. No, there was nothing. Like, the
Wow.
closest thing to what I wanted to build was in Australia. Nobody had a physical location. Nobody was truly specializing in people that were going through divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You had the attorneys, but nobody was helping on the financial side apart from traditional
Right.
financial advisory work. So, my model is really financial coaching, which is the attitudes and beliefs about money, the education. So I'm a certified financial education instructor and have taught in higher education. So I understand that piece. And then the CDFA part, which is certified divorce financial analyst, which is okay, great. I can crunch the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real holistic approach to help women go from crisis to closure in really 6 months, right? I mean, my focus is taking them through a method that I've developed over the last decade that works. Like it's a proven method. It has worked and will continue to work. And if it doesn't work anymore, then we're doing something else, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and I'm wondering, like, how are they emotionally or anything like that? How is their mental health when they're coming to you? Because I just remember, like, thinking back when I was going through my divorce, I'm like, I was so like in a fog that I really didn't even understand anything. And then I even went to go talk to my financial advisor after that because we had split our money. And I just felt like I was so in a fog. I mean, that was by design, I think, with my ex, him having taken care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like I really didn't know what was going on because I didn't. So, how do you guide them when they're coming to you? Are you able to read their body language and go, like, you're going to be okay? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple things to that. I think first of all, part of my process is, you have to build your team. But what I say with that is your essential team, which
Yeah.
is legal, whatever that looks like, financial and emotional.
Hmm.
And the emotional can be coaching, it can be therapy, it can be both,
Okay.
whatever, right? But there's plenty of times when I'll say, okay, listen, sister, are you working with somebody on the emotional side? Because it is an
Yes.
important part of it.
Yeah.
Now, the financial coaching piece of it around the attitudes and beliefs about money and using these micro moments of saying, let's just take a moment here. I want to share with you what's going on. I want to explain to you a little bit about what you have here for insurance. I want to explain to
Hmm.
you a little bit about how this works. And they go through this process coming to the end where they're like, Rhonda, this was actually fun. I've never really done much with the
Yes.
finances. I realize I don't have to know everything. I just have to ask really good questions and
Yeah.
surround myself with people that can help me.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity for them if they haven't handled the finances in the past to lean into it in a really safe spot, right?
Yeah.
Which I can help them kind of develop that safety net where they can ask those questions and refamiliarize themselves with the financials. I mean, a lot of times people will say, Rhonda, I mean, back in the, I balanced my checkbook, or
Yes.
I handled the finances before I got married, and then it was a divide and conquer, and he handled this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fine. Like, at the end of the day, we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I really think that is important that I want to make sure I articulate, Laura, is like, women are smart.
Yeah.
This is not a hey, you're not smart enough. Like there's been so many times where women will say, Rhonda, am I smart? Literally, like, am I smart enough?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
Here's the formula for that, right? When we look at the confidence that comes around money, there's a formula.
Yeah.
And the formula came out of a study that Prudential did, a longitudinal 10-year study. But it was the punchline is it was knowledge, so having financial knowledge
Hmm.
plus experience.
Yeah.
So if you have the knowledge without the experience, it's just theory. If you have the experience without the knowledge, it's trial and error, and you're like, I don't know, I'm just going to try it and see if it works. But when you get the two of those working together,
Yeah.
it's magical.
Yeah.
And that is the framework that I have built my business on over the last 10 years is helping women walk, through this. I've said, listen, if I can help one woman improve her relationship with money,
Yeah.
I've empowered her for a lifetime.
Right. And,
Because my interaction with them is minimal. I mean, I'm here through the process. Once the
right.
divorce is over, I get them pointed in the right direction, make sure they've got their post-divorce team, and I start that process over with
Right.
somebody else, you
That's
know?
really good. And I, something you were saying before, kind of that the alpha male thing happening in the office, things like that. I just think about that sometimes there are those old fashioned ways of thinking, right? About maybe women and money and things like that. And I think even now it even now today, we know we might have that where, oh no, you don't have to take care of that. But I like that you're trying to help people, empowering women to be like, yes, you can do this, because I think the narrative has been that you can't. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely felt that way. And so I'm glad that you're doing that kind of thing and trying to change the narrative and helping them feel confident in what they're doing.
Yeah. It's really huge. And I think, there was two things I wrote down while you were chatting.
Uh-huh.
One is I remember when I was in the financial industry and you have to take exams and all of that jazz, right?
Mhm.
And I took the fiduciary license, which is the Series 65. It's one of the more difficult ones, right?
Mhm.
I passed it on the first time. And I remember my male colleagues being like, wait a minute, you passed? And I'm like,
Wow, seriously?
it
Wow.
was awful, right? Or, hey, she's got a great personality and she's really great with people. And there are times,
Yeah.
right, when that bubbles up. And I'm like, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Right? All those, that decade plus where people are like, oh, yeah, she's got a great personality, but,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
so I've had to work through a lot of the things that my clients end up working through related to, yeah, your spouse said, listen, don't worry about it, we've got a guy. Or, you know what, I'll
Yeah.
just take care of it. Or I'm a financial expert, and so I'm going to be the one who handles it. And, don't worry about it. Here's an allowance. I mean, the amount of stuff that happens as it relates to that is just ridiculous. And I know one of the things you mentioned when we first kicked off was
Mhm.
financial abuse. And, I had somebody ask once, and it's actually a gentleman who said,
Mhm.
well, Rhonda, how do you know if I mean, what's financial abuse, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
and at the end of the day, it simply comes down to, it doesn't mean that one party knows every single thing. It means, do they have access to that information?
Yes.
Can they ask questions? Can they get the information that they're asking for? Um, just because somebody maybe has the code to the bank account go to their phone doesn't necessarily mean that there's financial abuse happening.
Right.
But if they're not willing to give the code, or they're like, well, what do you want? Oh, I see every single, expense that came through the credit card. I get a ding on my phone. What did you buy? Why are you buying it?
Yes.
So it's subtle sometimes,
Right.
but it's usually comes down to control. Are they controlling,
Right.
the statements? Is somebody only an authorized user on a credit card? Yes, they can use it, they have access to it, but they can't get the statements. They don't know what their spouse is spending, but they
Right.
seem to know what you're spending,
Right.
So
Yes. And I definitely experienced that. And I just think about some of the financial abuse of like accounts that maybe weren't discussed, or like you said, um, you don't have access to things like that, because I felt like I experienced that after, and then I didn't have the money to dig into that, and
yeah,
so I had to let it go at some point. I did get my share of what I knew about, but I feel like there was something else and I couldn't do anything about it. I just didn't, and that's the thing that it makes me sad, right? Is that kind of stuff, where is everything being talked about? And it just comes down to control
yeah,
and that kind of thing. How you're allowing the other person to to be in a relationship that's
Yeah.
supposed to be together.
Yeah. Well, and there's some strategies that go along with that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there are things that, people can be doing.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is, like you were describing what I call my damn method. And I'm not endorsing the damn method because they dodge the disclosure,
Yeah.
they avoid getting assets valued, and they misrepresent information. And it
Yes.
happens all the flipping time.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, okay, well, yeah, Rhonda, it's happening. It happened to me, happened to other people. What do we do about it? Well, what
Yeah.
we do about it is we craft the right questions to be asking. We make sure you've got the right team of people.
I love that.
And sometimes you just got to go direct to the company and get the information.
Yeah.
One of the strategies we've used is we've hired subcontracted out private investigative services on the financials. It's been a game changer.
Wow.
Like I'll have clients who they're like, yeah, my spouse, I know I've got, he's got a couple businesses. I know about these. Like usually they know about enough to keep them like, well, I knew about that. Yeah. And you
Right.
didn't know about the other three businesses that he had named
Right.
in like
Yeah.
the private investigator's new quote to me recently was business plus girlfriend equals whoa. And I'm like, can I put that on social media? Because it's so good. Like, you know,
Yes.
so there are certain things. Now, generally speaking, right? If it's you just never know. Have they set up an LLC? Are there other properties?
Right.
99% of the time, when we start looking, we find stuff.
Yeah.
But the attorneys, to their credit, they're not going to know where to look. They're not going to subpoena 100 banks in hopes that
Right.
they find one thing when we got to have enough clues
Yeah.
to know where to be looking to ask the right questions. I remember the first time we did that report. I'd worked with a private investigator in the past, and it was always super fascinating to me, right? The amount of access that they can actually get on things that
Yeah.
is accessible.
Yeah.
They're not getting bank account records, to be clear, and things like that, but they're getting enough information that helps us ask better questions so the attorneys are laser focused on what they're going to ask for.
I love that.
Because you're right, you made decisions based on the information that was presented.
Yes.
The output's only going to be good as the numbers that we're putting on that balance sheet or the income that we're
Right.
putting into the calculators. The numbers are only as good as that information is available.
Right.
And, so I think it's one of those things where, again, having a strategy, asking the right questions, and this is disruptive in a sense. Like a lot of times the attorneys will say, well, yeah, we've got this process and you just need to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
Yes,
that's
and.
the thing is that sometimes if you feel out of control because say you've been controlled, which I didn't completely know that at the time when I was going through my divorce, but I'm thinking back now with what you just said. If you already feel like you're being controlled and out of control, that's not a great statement to tell somebody.
No. And I think the other thing too that a lot of times, especially people that have stuff to work with, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
some assets there of some kind,
Yeah.
where they'll be like, oh, listen, you're going to be just fine. To which I say, well, how do we know that? Why don't we define
Just
what
fine.
fine means?
Yes. Yes.
Because, you've got again, there's different levels of that. And my perspective is it truly does not matter. There could be seven figures in the bank account. There could be two figures in the bank account, right? I mean, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. At the end of the day, if we as women don't know what that means for us,
Yeah.
just because there's more money in the bank account does not mean that there's more peace of mind.
Right. Yes.
It just doesn't. I mean, when I went through my coaching training 10 years ago, I remember coming back from that training and I was fired up, right? Because I'm like, everybody in that room was a nonprofit organization. And they said, Rhonda, the women that you're working with they don't need this because you're only working with high net worth people, which was
Oh.
an assumption on their part because it's not true.
Okay.
um I work with women in all different stages,
Yeah.
right? If they're coachable, if they want an advocate, if they want to make sure that they're moving the needle to get a better outcome, I can help them whatever level that looks like, right?
Yeah.
But the women that I've worked with in the past that had seven figures worth of net worth, there was this actually a wealth bias for them.
Wow.
Like, listen, honey, you're going to be just fine. Accept whatever
Oh.
he's giving you. He gave you this proposal. And man, I mean, most of us would be happy if we got a seven-figure buyout.
Yeah, so condescending. Yeah. Right, exactly. And that and
Not
that's
okay.
No, it's really not okay. Because does that even make you like that wouldn't make me even want to ask questions or anything. I'd just be like, okay, yeah, I'll sign
Yeah,
it. And that to
that
me is manipulative. You know what I
it
mean? It
is.
really is.
Yep. It really is. And unfortunately, that's the case. I mean, one of the very first clients I worked with, her husband was a business owner, and that was exactly what was happening. They came and said, oh, listen, you can have a $1 million buyout. And people are like, oh, take $1 million. Heck yeah.
Right.
But it's not right. He didn't disclose any information. And guess what?
Oh, yeah.
She walked away with 4.6 million,
Yeah. Yeah.
like more than 3 times what they were proposing and offering her. And like I think we as women need to rally around that. Like, listen, we need to be grateful when people like have a good outcome, right? Because it's like we're
Right.
making a difference for like women as a whole, not just
Right.
like, well, she should have just been happy she got 1 million and like, no, no, no,
No.
no.
Right. Right.
You
Well,
know?
because if we change those numbers, if we change those numbers to be, say, more a median income or something, just think about that. Say, oh, you got $1,000 instead of
Hundred.
$46,000 or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah,
right? Like seriously, like that's a big difference
it
if you
is.
think about it in, an average median range. And it's like that's what people don't understand. It's not about the numbers to me. It's really about that whole manipulation and control.
Absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to really talk to you and have you talk to my audience because I know this is happening. Let me tell you how many people just had a message the other day. I want to leave, but the money. And now my answer is not super helpful. I am not a coach, but my answer was I'd rather live in a ditch than than spend one more day in that marriage. So I'm the wrong person to ask. Then maybe I'll send them your way. Well, because I totally get it. Like literally these are conversations I'm having
Yeah,
almost every day. You know, I want to leave but the money.
you
And
know.
it's like, and look, I had in Nevada, we're 50-50. We did have some assets we were able to divide, etc. And so I wasn't in a ditch. But I got to the point where I was like, and maybe that's a bad attitude because at the end I would have been that person. Yeah, I'll just take the $1,000 or the million
Yeah,
dollars. You know what I mean? I just want to get
yeah,
out. And I feel like if you help, well, because there were times where I was just like, yeah, forget it, whatever, I don't care. And I feel like you get to that point where you need to like
yeah.
control that situation and be like, okay, well, I'm going to care for you.
That's right. Well, and that's exactly what ends up happening. I mean, there is that point, right? And again, it doesn't mean that like you have to be fighting infinitum, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
not helpful
Yes.
either.
Right.
But when you still feel like, listen, we still can move the needle, right?
Yeah.
Everything is negotiable. I don't care
Yeah.
what it is, whether it's child support, whether it's alimony, whether it's
Yeah.
property division. I think a lot of times people think, well, Ron, it's black and white. Yeah, but it goes back to the output in those calculators is only going to be as good as the numbers we're putting in and what are we putting in.
Yeah.
And it's not black and white. As much as sometimes people like to kind of deduce it down to that, it's just not.
Right.
So I do tend to be the one that I'm like, okay, listen, I get where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but here's what you're leaving on the table. And one of the things we've
Okay.
seen too, the stats, right, is hey, it's a 41% decrease in, lifestyle post divorce. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well,
Yeah.
you take the mortgage, for example, if you know what the mortgage is or what your rent is, and you take that and you multiply it, right, times 41%, and you subtract that amount from that. And you're like, I went from living in a,
Yeah.
$2,000 apartment, and we
Yeah.
do the math. Let's look at that here quick. So we do, hey, I've got a $2,000, right, times a 41% decrease.
Yeah.
You're taking 820 off the top. So now
Right.
you're looking at living somewhere for $1,180.
And I
You
know that
just
in Las Vegas, oh my gosh, there's, well, number one, you're not going to find anywhere to live, or you're going to be living in not a great part of town because I think we're like, Nevada's pretty high right now, and Las Vegas too. I mean, Las Vegas is bad right now. And I can, like, in real terms, think about that. If I only had that much to spend, no, that's not good.
It's not okay. It's
Right.
not okay. And so you've just, like you said, you've gone from being in a, whatever area, right,
Yeah.
to now a not good area. Or, I mean,
Yeah.
you're just kind of like going, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, the good news is, I think a lot of times women automatically want to go there. Like, Ron, I'm going to be living in an efficiency apartment in a
Yeah.
super bad neighborhood and concerned for my safety. It doesn't have to be that, though. I mean, that's
Okay.
where, again, the advocacy piece comes in to say, okay, let's look at that. What are
Yeah.
the average ranges in your area? And let's back into, what you need to have coming in from
Yeah.
work, from support, from, other assets or whatever. Like, it can be a multi-pronged approach to help make sure that you can be safe, and then some, right? I
Right.
mean, it's interesting. I think a lot of times people carry those around in their mind. Like,
Yeah.
I was working with a lady and she's like, Rhonda, my credit score is bad. And I said, okay, well, what is it? She goes, I don't know. I just know it's bad.
Oh,
And
she doesn't even know.
I said, okay, well, first of all, right? But that's what we do. Our mind's like, Rhonda, I'm going to be living in a ditch. No, you're
Yeah.
not. You're not going to be living in a ditch, right? Like,
Right.
let's come back out and like find. But so I said to her, listen, I need you to go in and look.
Right.
So she did,
We can find that right away.
right? And she goes, okay, Rhonda, guess what it is? And I said, because she thought it was like 480,
Oh, come on.
right?
Okay.
So she goes and she goes, oh my gosh, Rhonda, it was 620.
Okay. That's a lot better.
But here's the point with that, right? Like, how many times do we as women we carry that? We
Yeah.
carry this. I think that it's set 480, but we really don't know that it's 480.
Right.
So when you get these messages that are like, yeah, but the finances, I can't leave. So they're
Mhm.
carrying this heaviness of feeling like they have to stay because they've told themselves their credit score is 480 when
Yeah.
really it's 620 or whatever. I mean, that's a game changer. This is like, you could not get a loan come hell or high water, or, yeah, you know
Right.
what? You're on the lower end of normal. Let's see what we can do. I mean,
Right.
like, it's
Right. But now you have something
huge.
to work with, really. Well, and that's a thing for me, and why I'm going to have to start like directing people your way to have conversations. I also send people to my mediator to have conversations because I have friends who go like, I can't leave. And I and I always say this on the podcast, and people know this by now. I do not promote divorce. I promote not staying in abuse. So I have
Amen to
friends,
that.
yeah, I
Yep.
have friends who are like, I can't leave. And I'm like, just talk to, if they're in Nevada, I just say, just talk to my mediator because she will give you a free consultation and
Yeah.
tell you what can happen. And she's got resources and all this stuff, right? And I'd love to have you as a resource on my website, for people, because when we don't know, when we think it's 480 and it's not, we really truly go, I can't leave. And I'm thinking about one friend who just talked to me and said she can't leave because of finances. I'm thinking, I know what kind of job you have. I feel like, look, some people don't want to. I don't know this person, another person that my friend said, yeah, she's not going to leave because her lifestyle would have to decrease. And I'm just like, those are choices that we have to make. And I chose, I would rather live in a ditch than live in this marriage. And as you can see, I'm not living in a ditch. But I'm not in that marriage. You know what I mean? It's like I used to have a big beautiful house. I am perfectly happy here in my condo because I got what I needed
Yeah.
and made the choices I needed for my life. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah.
I
It's
know.
just it's crazy.
Well, and again, it's prioritizing, what's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And again, crunching the numbers. I mean, there's times when it's like, hey, listen, yeah, there may have to be some adjustments to expenses.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't want people feeling like they can only, clip coupons and never
Right.
go on vacation. I mean,
Right.
that's not fun either while their spouse is out, doing whatever. So,
Right.
we just got to crunch the numbers and see where stuff lands and give women, a voice to be able to
Yeah.
advocate for what they need.
So I want to ask you a few things. Some things came to mind about what are some things that women can be doing right now, even if they're not thinking about getting a divorce, but things that they can be doing right now in regards to finances if they are married or partnering with somebody in finances.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, right, it just comes down to, even if it doesn't sound fun,
Right. Because it's
setting
not.
aside some, no, setting aside some time, right, for yourself or you and your partner, whatever, to have
Yeah.
conversations. And nobody's going to like sit around and sing kumbaya around the finances. But I think at the end of the day, grab a beverage, light a candle, put on some music, and just say, okay, I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to look through my bank statement,
Yeah.
or I'm going to, whatever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple keys, really simple things. I would say one, just give yourself permission to ask questions.
Okay.
And if people give you pushback or they're not willing to answer them, then you're not asking the right people, right?
Okay.
So ask questions. Hey, what does that mean? I see we've got, a home equity line. What,
What
I
does
mean,
that mean?
whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, anything like that. And then is it, and then asking the questions of like trying to ask the questions of what are all the accounts that we have kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. So getting an inventory of what you have and where it is. I mean, a lot of times women will say, yeah, I want to just have stuff just in case, gosh, my spouse dies, like
Right.
there's that reality too. I mean, so it doesn't just have
Yes.
to be divorce, but I think we
Yes.
as women as a whole need to take an interest, even if we're not interested in it, and
Right.
ask questions and gather information and take inventory. And for goodness sakes, when you get the tax return, look at it.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Don't just sign. That's
Yeah.
probably my biggest advice. Don't just sign. Ask questions, right? Review the documents, even if
Yeah.
you couldn't care about it.
Right.
Take
Yes.
we can all do things we don't like for 5 minutes, right? So I mean, at
Right.
least like, so you can say, yeah, I didn't just sign it just to sign it. No, you knew at a base level
Right.
what was going on,
Right.
you know?
It's so funny because I've never been in a healthy relationship with money, not with money, but with my ex and money. And so,
Yeah.
like, all the things you're saying, I'm like, I've asked all those questions and I wasn't, oh, don't worry about it because it's all about control. But that's another thing too, right? Is to kind of consider that. That's why I think it's important to ask the questions, but then also, like, how are they answering you? And so then, I don't know, then you might have to start go to
Yeah.
counseling or something. But I think it's important to ask the questions so that because God forbid they also pass away. That is a reality. And you have to know. Thank goodness, when my sister in law passed away, my brother was able to get to all her accounts, because she had left all that information and they knew about each other's, accounts and stuff like that. So I just remember that process was easier than we were expecting it to be because I
Yeah.
just thought it was going to be, he'll never get this money. And then what?
Yeah.
And now what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's really important. And, that was one of the things that I saw when I was in the financial industry was a lot of times, yeah, women would be super excited about it. Then they'd go home and be deflated because their
Yeah.
spouse either didn't want to share. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's an interesting dynamic, but there's nothing to say that you can't, open up your own credit card or open up your own account. I mean, there
Yes.
are some things that you can do.
Yeah.
But again, it's tricky because each situation's a little bit different.
Right.
The
Exactly.
dynamics are different, but
Yeah.
hey, you know what? It wasn't until the late 70s
I
that women
know.
could actually take out I've been saying that stat for years, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, look, now it's finally like gaining some traction.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't be afraid, right,
Yeah.
to be asking questions. I mean, I bought a business condo 5 years ago, knew nothing, I have no experience in doing any of that. And I didn't tell anybody I was going to the meeting. I just showed up with the broker and the property management person. And I was like, I'm just going to get information. And what I said was, I'm happy to make a decision when I have all the information. I asked questions. I pulled in
Yeah.
my banker. I pulled in my CPA. I had this team of people. They were all like, Rhonda, this is great. I got an SBA loan. At the closing table, my male colleagues in that scenario were like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Rhonda, great deal. Meaning like, hey, you rock, like great deal. I didn't knew nothing. I have never done anything with real estate, on my
Yeah.
own. We didn't have a real estate agent. I'm not encouraging that, but I did it with the owner,
Yeah.
right? Negotiated all the pieces. I mean, I look back at that, I would do it again in a heartbeat. But
Yeah.
my mindset with it was, first of all, I don't want to listen to the noise.
Right.
Number two, I want to get the information to make a good decision. And
Yes.
third, I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to own my decision. And then 3 years later, I sold that property and made money on it. Like
Yeah.
it was a revenue generating opportunity and I would do it again,
Yeah.
you know? And so just encouraging the
Right.
women, like, you don't have to know everything. You just got to be
No.
able to be willing to ask questions. unapologetically
Yeah.
ask questions. And what I would always say is, help me understand. You know what? People love sharing with you how smart they are. So great, you can
Yes.
benefit from that.
Yes. No, for sure. And that's one of the things I've talked to um, some financial advisors because I don't want to be on this with the same financial advisor that I had with my ex, and I still do. So you and I are going to talk
Yeah.
because I don't want to. I don't want, for one thing, the way he doesn't talk to me like he just talks to me like I'm my ex's ex-wife. You know what I mean? It's weird to me, and I'm like, can you not talk to me, like I don't know anything? Because you don't have any idea what I know and don't know.
Exactly.
And and then I've talked to I've like interviewed other people and haven't gone with anybody. And I remember sitting with one company and all they were doing were like, you got to do this, you have to, like there was so much pressure. And I was like, yeah, I said, I'm not going to make any decisions of things I don't understand. And that should tell you that maybe I
Mm-hmm.
need to explain this better or something. No, not them. They just, I finally was like, stop contacting me because I'm like, why are you trying to take my money? Like, that's what it was feeling
Yeah.
like. It was really making me uncomfortable. And I'm like, I don't understand. And especially at my age, I'm 57. So it's different, like how I'm putting my money towards things because I'm going to be accessing it
Yeah.
in whatever, 10 years or something. And so that kind of stuff, it was really uncomfortable. And that's why I've been like frozen until I've had conversations with you now. So I
Yeah.
really have been frozen because it really made me feel pressured.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think, and that was the stuff that I would see when I was actually in the financial industry that would just
Okay.
absolutely drive me crazy,
Yeah.
right? I would like, okay, they see this as an opportunity for, vultures, right? They're just like circling around and you're like,
Right.
oh my gosh, no. Like,
Right.
women need to understand, what's going on. And
Right.
while we might not know all the intricacies of all the pieces, a baseline understanding
Right.
is essential and it helps us make good decisions,
And
Women
treating
are smart, you know?
Well, right, exactly. And treating them with respect. I think respect in general, just because to me, it's like if I said, I'm not going to sign anything I don't understand, and they didn't even want to explain it to me, oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm done because you think there's only one of you. No, there's a million of you, and I will go find someone else. And that's the kind of thing for me. And that's really important to me. Well, integrity is important to me, but it's that customer service piece of where you're kind of giving me some care because I think people maybe from your perspective, like for your position, the vulture thing, right? Maybe they don't want to take the time to explain. But boy, if you took the time with some kid gloves and took the time to explain it to me because maybe I didn't understand, I had to ask the same question multiple times, I might be a lifelong business partner with you
Yeah.
forever. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
really, that's the thing, a lifelong client. That's how I feel and that's how I work because you made me feel safe and
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah. It's really huge. And I think, that was, from the day that I started my business until now, right? That's certainly been, I mean, I think that's why you and I resonated with each other
Yeah.
so well because I've always said, like, when you're looking for an expert, no matter who it is,
Yeah.
they need to, if you haven't gathered, I love acronyms. So it was like, okay, I got to come up with an acronym, right? So the acronym is CIA, which
Okay.
is communication, right? Proactive, communication, integrity, and advocacy.
Love it.
And when you have those three things that are working together, right, you create that safety, you create that trust, you know that somebody's got your best interest at heart,
Yeah.
and and it works. And so whether people are listening and you're hiring an attorney or you're hiring a coach or
Yeah.
no matter what, take them through that filter. And like you might say, well, Ron, I'm not looking for like hardcore advocacy. It doesn't have to be that way. It can just be
Right.
somebody who's advocating for your best interest. I think
Mm-hmm.
we have to, as women, kind of redefine what that looks like too. It doesn't mean like you're going to go in and tick everybody off. It just means that like you're willing to be firm and confident and have a plan.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really great.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. And I think that might be a good place to stop, unless you have something else you want to share with everyone. I thought that was maybe a good place to
Yeah.
end. It's been a really good conversation. And I know that I'm going to put this in the show notes, but I know you have a resource for everybody, a mini course. And tell me just a little bit about your free mini course that you have available for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in that, we are going to be sharing 6 key steps for getting a fair divorce
Love it.
financial settlement. Um, and so I walk people through that. And then there's an opportunity as they're watching that, if they want to take advantage of another free bonus training, there's a part 2 to that. If they
Great.
like what they're hearing, they can dive a little bit deeper and kind of look behind the curtain
That's right.
at my signature bridge method and how that might be able to help them.
That's amazing. And I'm going to put all of that information in the show notes and then also your website so they can look around and get a hold of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Where else can everyone find you? Like on socials or anything like that? And we'll have some of that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say Instagram's a great place
Hmm.
at Rhonda Noordyk. So that's under my personal name, but would love
Okay.
for people to reach out and connect there as well.
Sounds good. Rhonda, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. It was so informative and helpful, and it made me feel calm and not anxious. Oh, yeah.
Yay!
Well, that's why you and I started talking. That's a thing is there's plenty of vultures and sharks and all that stuff, out there. And that's why I think we connected and, because I just want to find these resources. I'm so thankful, like being in this space. It's been wild, but I had to open my mouth to say, this is what I'm going through for people to go, well, I could help with that, or I can help with that. You know what I mean? Because so I want my audience to have these resources so they don't have to feel like they have to go through any of this stuff alone. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And guys, if anything resonated with you today, please leave a review on Apple and Spotify. And of course, go to social media and touch all the buttons and say hello and let Podcast Land know that you love us. Thanks again, Rhonda, for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.